and welcome to the Tea and a Buddy podcast. I'm Dominic.
And I'm Erica.
And today's episode, we're talking about why Americans get annoyed by Brits roasting them online.
Yes.
So angry about it. So, yeah, and I think it's, this is something that I see mainly more British people getting mad about, being roasted by Americans. Americans go, oh, we saved your ass in World War II.
Well, yeah. I think you and I were talking about it beforehand, and I think that Americans get more annoyed when we feel like we've been insulted. Like when we feel
because
like
Brits
something's
can
against...
be vicious.
When we feel like
somebody
said something against America. Rather than like you were talking about things like an American posting a picture of a roast dinner made, or a British style roast dinner,
British Sunday roast,
and going, oh, what do you guys think? Whatever, and all the Brits just going, oh, that's not the way it's supposed to go.
Well, she posted it. This was from like a few months ago. She posted this woman in New Jersey. Posted this thing, said, oh, I was inspired and I wanted to make it for my family. And, she made Yorkshire puddings and she did roast chicken.
Yeah.
And she did, because they don't really eat cauliflower cheese over here, she made broccoli cheese. Because that's a no-no. It's like you've got to make it exactly how British people do it. But, and the Brits get so wound up about that.
Yeah. And you were saying, like, for instance, if the same thing, like if there was a British woman living over here and she was like, or even if she was in Britain, it was like, that meatloaf that they're always eating in America, I think I want to try to make that. And I've made it now. Here's a picture of my meatloaf. And it looked like a bit off of what we usually eat.
It looked horrible, yeah.
Yeah, if it looked a bit odd, quite different. I think you would have most Americans going, either just not caring enough to even comment.
It's quite funny because...
Or, that's all right, yeah,
Just thinking about this, you said, it's insulting America that gets Americans so wound up. And like, oh, we won the world and, we kicked your ass and whatever, But with Brits, if American goes, oh, and you lost an empire and like that, Brits don't care about that. I mean, there's going to be a marginal few that get all, like, wound up and start going, yes, we had the greatest empire in the world and whatever in 1920 or whatever,
Yeah.
But the majority of Brits just be like, I don't care. But it's like, oh, by the way, prawn cocktail crisps suck.
Yeah.
Oh, then it's war.
Yeah.
Then it's like, kill you. They get so wound up about it's British stuff.
So basically, Brits are petty.
Sausage rolls suck.
Brits are petty, and Americans are overly patriotic.
Yes,
the end.
the end. And it's like it's a reverse thing, because it's like do you know what? Twinkies suck.
Yeah.
It's like
you'd probably have a lot of Americans going, yeah, they are. They're horrible, aren't they?
And it's kind of the same thing, it's like, oh, British, things suck, you lost your empire. It's like, yeah, we did, didn't we?
Although that's not exactly true, is it? If you had, I think that if you saw someone online, a British person who was living in America and going, oh, you know what, they eat so much junk over here and Twinkies suck and what are all these little Debbie's stuff.
Yes, if it was just
if they were going on
like if I was going on about that, right?
What would you see a majority of Americans commenting?
This is the land of the free.
Get out of this country.
Get out of this country.
They'd just be like, well,
go back to
home.
England.
Yeah, they'd be like,
go back to
home.
England. Go back home then.
Yeah.
We don't want you here.
I think
You're
that's
not
true
welcome.
in Britain, though. I think that's same.
It's the same sort of thing. Well, yes,
They'd be
I know.
Like, well, just go home then.
Yeah,
you
just
don't
go
like
home.
Our stuff. Go home.
No, you go home. You go home.
But specifically, why the UK, because it's not only the UK that roasts America online.
No, it's not. I mean, French people and all of Europe does it too.
But it's mostly the UK that Americans would respond to. Well, probably it's just because we speak the same language, so we can understand that we're being insulted, you know?
Well, one of the things I've got on here is taxes. And, you know, it's like, oh, you know, I saw this thing where it's like, oh, we should make fun of Americans more and the fact that, you know, they don't include the tax on their price tag. And that's something that I make fun of all the time, too.
Yeah.
So, you know, and apparently some American expat who's living in New Zealand for 2 years says, oh, I'll never not be surprised by, you know, I get something I got a $2 coin, which is because I use dollars in New Zealand, and I can get 2 things, and I bring it up to the register, and I get the expected transaction, you know. It's $2, you know.
Yeah.
And you know, in the States, it's kind of like, that was something when I first got here. I picked something up and it was like $1 or something, you know, like a candy bar or whatever it was, and I took it to the thing, and they were like, oh, it's $1.15 or whatever the tax was.
Yeah.
And I was like, what? It says $1 on the thing, and it's just like, and you were like, oh no, it's the tax.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, but shouldn't that be included in the price? You know, so you just pay it there and there. You're like, oh no, because it's different everywhere you go.
Yeah.
And sometimes they eliminate it. Yeah, and that's just so crazy to me. You know, it's like, yeah, I can see why you don't bother including it, because, you know, it's like, oh, you know, like a Hershey bar will be $1 somewhere else, but it'll be $2.15 in another, you know, just 20 minutes away.
And in some states,
they don't even do it. They don't even do sales tax.
Sales tax, yeah. But I think most Americans, like, if you live in Texas, we just know that it's not what we see on the.
Well, yeah. If you live in the States,
if you live in if you're from here, then we just know that the price we see on there, it's going to be marked up, you know, 8% or whatever, depending on where we live, you know. We just know that, and we expect that when we.
It's so funny because when I said to you, oh, we went to Poundland.
Yeah.
And I was like, you can go up and get this one. You were like, oh no, how much is it? And I was like, well, it's going to be £1, because, you know, you're only buying that one thing.
Yeah.
And you were like, oh no, I'm going to need more than £1. And I was like, no, you're not. Yeah. And you were like, yeah, and you thought I was playing a joke on you, you know, or something, and you went.
Well, I was just like, what? What do you mean, no?
You're not going to need more than £1. It's £1. It says it's £1. It's £1. Go and do it, you know. And you went up and you did it.
I think I thought you didn't. I was like, oh, well, you don't know, or whatever. Like,
you don't know. So you're just like, and I remember you said, okay, £1, like that, and you give him the £1, and you give him it kind of like timidly a little bit, like, okay.
And what, you know?
Yeah, £1 and what? And then you walked down and you're like, wow, it really was £1. And I was like, yes, it really was £1.
Yeah, it is a weird feeling, you know, but at the same time, I think we've had this discussion.
We've had all these discussions before, but we're rehashing them for your enjoyment. Difficult. But it's like when Brits, you know, they go to that thing of like, oh, you're stupid and fat, you know, and that comes from the stereotype of the American tourist who's walking around London with
that I guess comes from British television.
No, I guess it's obviously like, you know, there's some truth rooted in a stereotype. You know, it's like
at some point.
Yes. I mean, it's not like all the Americans who come to England are fat and stupid. You know.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's not a thing. But you know, it's just kind of like that, kind of like the ones who are loud, I guess, and showing ignorance are the ones who are remembered. It's like, oh god, it's a Yank again.
Yeah.
He doesn't know where he is. He's looking for fish and chips, and he wants to know the way to Trafalgar Square, Buckingham Palace, and it's like, you know, they all kind of like have that, you know, the same look. Kind of like, you know, they're usually from the south as well. They're usually from the southern states.
Yeah.
And they're just like, oh yeah, fish out of water, you know, I don't know what's going on here. Why am I here? And, you know, that kind of like thing. So that's just imprinted, and that's just been like stereotyped and copied throughout British comedy and.
They usually have like a Hawaiian shirt on,
Hawaiian
socks
shirt
with sandals, and a like sun visor for some reason.
Sun visor and huge glasses. For some reason, I always picture the stereotype with like those huge like Windows Bill Gates glasses, you know,
like early 1980s.
like that they're perpetually stuck in that thing with socks and sandals and everything, you know.
Yeah.
And they've got a wife who's like, oh, that's pretty. I want a London bus like that, and he's just like, oh. If it hadn't have been for America, England wouldn't be here.
Yeah, well, that's the argument that most Americans online, when America is being roasted by the UK, I think that's the go-to reply.
Go-to response. We kicked you out of here, and
that's why we kicked you.
Well,
that's why we kicked you all out of here and sent you packing. That's why we won the Revolutionary War, or it's either that. They either go to way back to the Revolutionary War.
Well, we had it, didn't we? I personally had it, an attack from someone on Instagram.
What was this?
It was months ago. I think we talked about it briefly. Someone was just like, you know, it was a political thing. I made a joke. And they supported a particular president.
Oh, right.
And they got mad about it and said something about kicking me back to...
I think they called you a communist or something.
They called me a communist. Yeah, that's another thing. That's another stereotype that Americans seems to have, is like Britain is communist.
Yeah.
And, you know, we don't live in a free land, you know. And
yeah.
It's just like, that's one of the things, like, you commies over there, you don't know what it means to be free.
Yeah.
I've seen that, you know. And it's kind of like, no, we've never been communist.
Yeah. So I mean, they either like to go all the way back to the Revolutionary War, or the next like most common reply is, if it weren't for us, you'd all be speaking German.
Speaking German, yeah, you know? I've heard that one too. You know,
yeah, they love to say that, Americans.
And it's just kind of like, well, that may or may not be true. You know, if Nazi Germany had won the war, there's no telling what could have happened to Britain. You know?
Yeah,
I mean,
if this is a different podcast, I think, but if Germany had taken over Britain, they presumably could have taken over the rest of Europe then, and if that were the case, possibly come to America and, you know, fought in America for all we know, you know. Yeah. I mean, who knows?
Well, I think by that, I think in this hypothetical situation, America would have just isolated itself from everything if that had happened. It would have been like, okay, Europe's gone now. We don't talk to them anymore. Okay, just don't open the door if they come. You know.
Yeah.
It's just that kind of thing, you know. But yes, I mean, that's one of the things, you know. Oh, yeah, we saved everyone's bacon.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's like that's one of the actual response, and we've got this huge military, and we're leaders of the free world, and
yeah,
we're the only ones that know about freedom.
But I think we do. Tend to save our like ridiculous. I don't want to call it ridiculous. I think we tend to save our anger, our angered replies, for only things that are sort of valid criticisms rather than petty criticisms. So
and in that,
the obesity and the intelligence, I think that insults our intelligence for us to be called, you know, everybody in America is stupid, you know.
I say it's like the American tourist of that stereotype, but it's actually because of the fast food.
Well,
exports.
yeah.
You know, it's like, oh, McDonald's.
The
is
obesity
huge.
thing is,
yes.
Yeah. Oh, everybody.
Burger King, KFC.
And again, that's not just the UK. Like, everybody in Europe thinks that about America. That's not just the UK, but I think it is just because the UK, we can understand what the UK is saying when they say it about us. So we're just like, oh, get out of here. You know, when someone in France or, you know, Italy or something says it, you know, they're just able to like keep that amongst themselves unless you happen to speak that language, you know.
Yeah, no, because it's so funny. Because, you know, if like a French person or, you know, Spanish person or whatever goes on the internet and insults America, it's instantly the American will go, well, you Brits, blah, blah, blah. you know?
Yeah.
And
if they're saying it in English.
If they're saying it in English, obviously, because, you know... Mm-hmm. And it's just like, well, actually, I'm not British, I'm French, or, you know, I'm
you just
Dutch.
never see that, though, do you?
No, I've seen a couple of, like, people on like, in
I
YouTube
guess
comments
Dutch
go...
maybe sometimes, but I don't ever see anybody, like, from Spain or Italy or France or Germany or anything. I just don't see it as often as Britain.
Well, yes, British people just like to... An argument. They're very argumentative.
British people are very angry.
Very angry about things, and it's like, oh, why are Brits so angry? It's because they lost an empire. It's like, really not. It's just, they just like to be angry.
I think criticizing the taxes, the sales tax and stuff, you know, I don't see Americans getting pissed off, really, about people criticizing the sales tax. I think they would generally just be like, yeah... it would be nice, wouldn't it, if we didn't have to pay sales tax at the cash register. The obesity and intelligence things, yeah. What were you gonna say about the spelling?
Yeah, the usual. It's like, oh, the U is important, you know, and
yeah,
aluminium and flavor with a U,
well, there
and
you
color
go.
with a U.
That sort of contradicts my argument that we don't get wound up as much about petty things, because that's very petty, isn't it? Yeah. And you see that absolutely
and then
all
someone
the
goes,
time.
oh, well, there's no U in freedom. You know, they'll shoot back. And then I seen this meme, was some Brit replied with, well, there's no N, H, or S in America either, you know. And someone goes, oh, what is that supposed to mean?
Yeah.
It's like National Health Service, you know, it's a universal healthcare program, you know.
You have to
explain it. And then they go, well, why doesn't America have this? Because your government keeps shutting it down, that's why. It's, yeah.
The spelling, though, that is...
And then it leads on to healthcare, going, oh, yes, my free healthcare that I have.
The spelling is a petty thing.
Yes.
You know, so that sort of contradicts my argument that America doesn't get as wound up about
saying
the
things
petty.
Wrong, like mirror, like mere. What's mere? And Graham, like Graham, you know.
Yeah, Craig.
Craig.
Like Craig and Craig.
Craig.
Yeah, I don't think that when British people say things... Well, the spelling, the U in being in words really starts up a lot of arguments on the internet for some reason.
Yes.
Why British people use you in their words. Sometimes, though, I'll notice
and burnt and stuff like that, you know, with the T.
It's a genuine question. Probably, I'm guessing, from, like, someone who's never traveled, possibly a teenager, you know, whatever. It's an innocent enough question. It's like, oh, why do British people use you in favorite or in color, and we just, like, why have that extra you? What's the point? And you inevitably see a British person go, because we invented the language or whatever.
Yes,
you know?
yes, because we invented the language.
And then the Americans have to go, oh yeah, well, if it were for us, you'd be speaking German, and it's just the same.
No, you'd be speaking German. You would.
It's just the
Eat
same
some prawn
thing
cocktail
all the
crisps,
time.
Beans on toast.
But yeah, moving on, you mentioned healthcare.
Yeah, I mean, that's another argument that usually descends into, oh, Americans are going broke paying for, you know, to see their doctors and stuff.
That's a much more valid argument to be
having. And it gets annoyed
and...
about people because capitalism, you know?
Yeah, I think, though, that when the topic of healthcare descends into an argument,
socialized medicine,
there's only things to be learned from that. Whereas arguing over the spelling of words is just silly, isn't it?
It's just like, it's like, why do Brits put the U in words, and why do they say car park instead of parking lot? It's just because we do.
Mm.
And, you know, it's like, and it's kind of like, and that's what annoys British people more, you know, when an American goes, why do Brits say this instead of the American thing?
Yeah.
And they go, because we were here first, damn it, get out of here. Oh, shut up.
Yes.
You know?
Oh my gosh, yes.
You know, so we invented the language. Beans on toast for everyone.
But when I see an argument about healthcare, I don't generally roll my eyes quite as much, because I'm like, well, this is kind of like... This is a good topic to be having an argument with someone in another country about, because we can only learn from each other from arguing over this topic, you know. things like spelling and
I think like the benefits,
whether Americans are stupid. It's just like, move on with your lives,
like to just get into a small smidgen of the healthcare debate. People go, why don't we have that in America? Why don't we have universal healthcare?
Right.
And it's like, well, someone playing devil's advocate said, well, if we had universal healthcare in America, what they try to do is scare tactic is like, oh, if Bernie Sanders became president and he forced it on us, you wouldn't be, that would all be all you could have is that social, and you'd be waiting months and you'd die and whatever, and you wouldn't get to see a doctor and everything would be lax and it's terrible. And it's like, well, it would put a heck of a lot of insurance companies out of a job. For a start, because people would enjoy that choice. Yeah. And, people who work for those insurance companies, they'd be forced to find employment elsewhere. So it's kind of like, this is a system that's been working and working and working, and if someone came in and said, you know what, you now have the option to get treated for free. And it's like, Americans are like, no, I like paying for my healthcare because I get a better thing of service. And it's like, well, I got it for free and I'm fine, Yeah. And they're like, okay, well, maybe I'll just stop paying that then.
Yeah, I mean,
it's like it's kind of like it's a double-edged sword.
There's
at the end of the day.
that.
There's pros and cons for it.
Oh, there's absolutely pros and cons.
Because the NHS is not perfect.
It's the same.
It's wonderful.
No, and I think that's something
but
to
it's
be
not
learned.
Perfect.
That's something to be learned also, is when British people are complaining about the NHS, because you only hear wonderful things about it all the time.
Well, the wonderful things about like people just thanking the Lord that they don't have a bill.
Yeah.
For but when they break their leg,
if they can't pay, they can still get taken care of. But then you have the argument of, well, are you really getting taken care of if you're waiting for months and months?
Have you really, had your head seen to or whatever?
Well, you're possibly dying on a wait list because, there's so many people ahead of you that are also needing treatment.
Yes.
Yeah. So, double-edged sword. Anyway, lightening things up.
Lightening things up, everybody. Back to your usual programming. Moving away from death now. And we'll get back to this, yes. Another thing.
Another petty argument.
Well, this is the big thing that gets Brits kind of like,
I don't see
riled up.
Yeah, but I don't see Americans getting wound up about this.
I mean, the outrage over like sweet and iced tea, it's like, oh, what are you doing?
Right.
Why are you having cold tea? Who would have sweet tea? And and then an American shoot back, it's like, oh, because we throw in that tea in the harbour, the Boston Tea Party and everything like that,
Yeah.
And, that's kind of like the petty argument that they go to is like, oh, because we don't drink tea, we drink coffee, and that's an American drink.
Yeah.
And, we're trying to be different from...
Yeah, unless you live in the South and then we drink iced tea.
It's just not done, is it? It's just not done.
But
it is done because it's delicious.
I mean, I guess Americans might get wound up about British people commenting about tea, but I don't really see that happening. I think
it's a petty thing.
I could see Americans not really caring.
It's like...
British people going, oh, why'd you drink that iced tea? They're just like, because it's hot and it tastes good. Squeeze some lemon in it.
You're just drinking that iced. You're drinking that iced tea.
Yeah.
How dare you?
I mean, maybe the topic of, oh yeah, we threw all your tea in the harbor might come up, but I just haven't really seen. It
usually goes back to like those that like the time when America was founded. We kicked you back to the, kicked you out.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of like a mute argument, isn't it, really? Because it wasn't really kicking anyone out. It wasn't really, because I've seen a lot of Americans go, oh, we still managed to crush the biggest army in the world at that point, the British Army, with our smaller armies. And it's just like, yeah, you're completely cutting the French.
With the help of France.
Yes, I know, you're cutting the French out of this, You're revising history, so France might not be... happy with you there.
Yeah.
And the Brits will remind us that actually you had French help, the wonderful French who we were at war with for so long.
I think criticizing our government, often winds Americans up.
Oh, yes, presidents. If you the 45th president notwithstanding, you know, like Obama or Bush or anyone like that, you know.
Criticizing any aspect of our government, I think, is just a little bit like Americans generally don't.
Please don't trash our presidents, you know.
I think they just generally, they don't want to hear criticism from people in other countries. They're just like, worry about your own.
So here we
worry
go.
About your own
Another
country.
Foreigner lecturing Americans on how to do things.
Yeah.
Piers Morgan.
They're like, oh, we came over here to get away from all of you.
The gun
in
control
the other countries,
debate gets them
gun
wound
control,
up.
yeah.
So shouldn't have guns.
Don't
how dare you?
How
dare you, sir?
Yeah, don't comment on things that are happening over here. You know, I mean, whereas British people get wound up if, you know, you say, oh,
prawn cocktail crisps.
McVitie's, what a crap company, you know?
You dunk biscuits in your tea. What's that all about? It's like, oh, how dare you, sir?
I mean, British people get wound up on the internet with each other, debating over
Brexit.
What goes, not even Brexit. What goes first on a freaking scone, the jam or the cream?
You wade into that debate, it's every man for himself.
It's just like, I mean,
it's like the sinking of the Titanic.
I think I'm a little maybe proud that Americans at least reserve our anger for, you know, a slightly more serious debates than like what comes first, the cream or the jam, you know.
I mean, again, you know, you'll outrage Brits with like, oh, we get outraged over serious matters. Our prime minister is a terrible person who's been spending so much public money on having his, you know, not declaring donors and whatever, you know, and having these takeaways for 800. I mean, there's that, and then there's, you know, then there's like, Annie put the cream on first. Yes. The final insult to my life.
Oh my!
It's because you put the cream on, Boris. First, Boris, is that my life is ruined.
My life is a misery.
Yes, my life is a misery because of you, Boris.
Let us know why, though, you guys think that Americans get wound up specifically at British people saying these things.
You know,
Do you think it's just because we speak the same language, or do you think there's something deeper that because, you know, a lot of Americans descend from Brits, then we still have sort of that familial connection that it makes it so much more personal for Brits to insult America than it does for, like, I don't know, you know, someone in, I don't know, wherever.
Austria.
Timbuktu, you know.
South Africa. Australia.
Timbuktu. Insulting Americans. You know, we don't seem to mind as much when it comes from a Canadian, let's say, you know, as we do.
Oh, they probably do. They probably get mad about Canada. It's like, oh, yeah, hockey and poutine.
I don't know. Yeah, you never see that, though. You only ever see Brits and Americans really going at it online. And I'm curious as to why you guys think the reason is. So you've heard why we think. Now let us know why you think the reason is. Other than that, I think we're out of time. Hope you enjoyed this episode. Thank you so much, as always, for tuning in. We appreciate your support.
Yes.
Be sure to check us out on social media. We are at TButty, TEABUTTY on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And we will talk to you next time.
Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.